When cameras roll live, tragedy can strike in an instant, turning routine broadcasts into horrifying spectacles viewers will never forget. These are the stories of 5 people whose final moments were captured on live television, witnessed by audiences expecting entertainment but seeing unthinkable horror instead. It was April 14, 2015, in a Midwest television studio buzzing before airtime, crew footsteps echoing under fluorescent lights beside a hastily built wooden platform raised 18 inches above concrete. Javen Trott, a 42-year-old morning show host, arrived earlier than usual that Tuesday. His weathered face showed the confidence of someone who had spent decades in broadcasting, first behind radio microphones, then transitioning to the physical demands of television. Known for his ability to improvise during live segments, Javen had built a reputation for making even mundane furniture demonstrations feel engaging to viewers across the region. His colleagues often remarked on his natural ease in front of cameras, a skill that had made him indispensable to the morning programming. Despite his experience, he maintained an approachable demeanor that resonated with audiences. The studio was understaffed that morning. The previous night's extended sports coverage had run late, leaving the technical crew with minimal time to properly inspect the set pieces. The plywood platform, designed to elevate the furniture display area, showed visible flexing during earlier rehearsals. A surface crack running along one edge had been covered with tape rather than properly repaired. The construction had been rushed to meet the morning deadline, with corners cut to save both time and budget. As the segment approached, Javen positioned himself near the platform's edge, handheld microphone in hand. The wide studio camera captured him in frame as he prepared to demonstrate a living room arrangement. The concrete subfloor beneath the temporary structure remained exposed around the platform's perimeter, creating an unforgiving surface below. Studio lighting created stark contrasts across the set, making depth perception challenging. When the live broadcast began, Javen stepped backward onto the platform as he had done countless times before. The plywood immediately split along a load-bearing seam. His right leg dropped through the opening, causing his torso to pitch forward violently and throw his upper body head first off the platform. His chest struck the sharp edge of a wooden coffee table with significant force, knocking the wind from his lungs. The impact sent him tumbling off the platform entirely. The back of his skull struck the bare concrete floor with a sharp, hollow impact. His body went still almost immediately, one arm twitching briefly before falling limp. A dark stain began spreading beneath his head as the wide studio camera remained on him for several seconds, capturing the motionless form on the floor. The microphone clattered across the floor, still transmitting audio. For nearly 10 seconds, the live broadcast remained on the fallen host before the control room abruptly cut the feed to black as crew members rushed onto the set. Without proper medical equipment on set, their attempts at stabilization proved limited. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but by the time they reached the set, Javen showed no pulse and no signs of breathing. Resuscitation efforts continued during transport, but he was pronounced dead shortly after arrival, with doctors confirming that the head impact on the studio floor had been fatal. The investigation later determined that the platform collapsed due to structural failure and the lack of a required pre-broadcast safety inspection. The temporary structure was not rated to support the load, and the visible crack should have forced an immediate replacement. Shortly afterward, the station permanently canceled the morning show. Viewers who had watched the collapse live later learned that the host died on the studio floor from a skull fracture caused by the fall. The studio was closed for review, and new inspection rules were imposed for all temporary sets. It was September 9, 2018, when the outdoor food festival in southwestern Arizona was reaching its peak afternoon energy. The desert sun blazed overhead at 102 degrees, casting harsh shadows across the vendor booths and performance stages scattered throughout the dusty fairgrounds. Local television crews had set up equipment near the main cooking demonstration area, where the smell of grilled meats and spiced vegetables mixed with the dry desert air. Teague Mull was 41 years old and had spent most of his adult life working temporary food stalls across desert fairs and weekend festivals. After leaving a warehouse job a decade earlier, he built his small business around portable propane burners and simple street dishes, often repairing and reusing his own equipment to keep costs low. Friends knew him as careful and routine-driven, someone who trusted the same worn tools he had relied on for years. That morning, Teague had been invited to participate in a live cooking segment for a local television station. The opportunity represented a significant boost for his small business. He arrived early to set up his portable cooking station, which consisted of a folding table, a high-output propane burner, and the necessary gas connections. The propane system had been assembled quickly using equipment that had seen extensive use. The rubber hose connecting the tank to the burner showed signs of wear, with small cracks visible along its length. The regulator had been swapped out from another setup without proper testing. As the afternoon segment began, Teague positioned himself behind the cooking table with the propane tank beneath the work surface. The camera operator focused on the demonstration while festival attendees gathered around. A faint odor of gas lingered near the burner, masked by the food aromas throughout the festival grounds. The propane had been leaking slowly from the damaged hose connection, collecting briefly beneath the table before warm air currents and foot traffic dispersed it into the open air. The leak remained undetected as Teague prepared his ingredients and explained his cooking process. When Teague reached for the burner's ignition switch, the escaping propane ignited immediately. The flame spread rapidly back to the damaged hose. Within seconds, the weakened hose ruptured completely, creating a continuous torch of burning propane that sprayed upward across the cooking station. The sustained jet of flame engulfed Teague's torso, arms, and face as his clothing ignited instantly. The ruptured hose sprayed burning propane across the cooking station, forcing him to stagger backward in panic. He collapsed onto the stage platform and stopped moving as the fire continued feeding from the open line. Festival staff rushed forward with fire extinguishers, but several seconds passed before they could shut off the gas at the tank valve. Paramedics arrived within 8 minutes and found Teague unresponsive with no detectable pulse. Resuscitation efforts continued on the stage as crews shut down the burning equipment. Teague was pronounced dead at the scene from catastrophic thermal burns and inhalation of superheated gases. The investigation later confirmed that a cracked propane hose caused the leak and rupture. Festival officials suspended all live cooking demonstrations and introduced mandatory equipment inspections. The live broadcast captured the ignition, the burst of flame, and Teague's collapse before the control room cut the feed. Later that evening, the station confirmed on air that the vendor had died at the scene, closing one of the few broadcasts in which a fatal accident was witnessed live. It was November 26, 2015, and downtown streets buzzed with holiday energy as crowds gathered for the annual Thanksgiving parade. The morning air carried a crisp chill at 42 degrees, with overcast skies threatening light drizzle. Colorful banners stretched across intersections while vendors set up along the sidewalks, transforming the usual business district into a festive corridor. Nella Quirk, 29, had arrived early to secure her position for the live broadcast. A freelance traffic reporter working on a short-term contract, she possessed the determined energy of someone building her career one assignment at a time. Fresh from journalism school, Nella approached each opportunity with meticulous preparation and genuine enthusiasm for field reporting. Her colleagues knew her as reliable and eager to take on challenging assignments that others might avoid. The production crew had positioned her directly beneath a steel camera cable stretched across the street at approximately 14 feet high. The cable system allowed for sweeping overhead shots of the parade route, capturing the full spectacle of floats and marching bands. Nella stood centered under the span, facing the camera with the parade route behind her, ready to deliver traffic updates as the procession moved through downtown. Technical crews had installed the cable system the previous evening, tensioning it between two utility poles to support the overhead camera equipment. The steel cable showed signs of wear near one of the mounting clamps, with visible fraying where the metal strands had begun to separate under repeated stress. Despite the obvious deterioration, no exclusion zone had been established beneath the cable, and parade operations continued as scheduled. As floats began moving down the street, Nella maintained her position for the live shot. The mounting clamp, weakened by the cable's fraying and sustained tension, reached its failure point without warning. The steel cable failed suddenly, sending the suspended camera rig swinging downward on its safety line. The heavy camera housing struck Nella across the shoulder and head, knocking her violently sideways into the path of a slowly advancing parade float. The impact sent her stumbling directly into the float's front wheel assembly. She fell beneath the vehicle's undercarriage, and despite the driver's immediate attempt to brake, the massive structure rolled over her torso. The weight of the multi-ton float caused catastrophic chest and abdominal injuries. Nella lay motionless on the street as parade personnel rushed to halt the procession, the overhead broadcast camera still transmitting the moment she was struck and pulled beneath the float. Emergency crews arrived within minutes, but the crushing trauma had caused irreversible internal injuries and massive hemorrhaging. Medical personnel confirmed death at the scene, attributed to multiple blunt force trauma and internal bleeding. The live broadcast feed continued for nearly 40 seconds before the control room abruptly cut back to the studio. Investigators later determined that the cable clamp had been improperly maintained by local technical operators. The frayed cable should have been replaced before the event, and safety protocols required establishing a clear zone beneath overhead equipment. The parade coverage ended abruptly, and subsequent safety reviews led to stricter equipment inspection requirements and mandatory clearance zones for future events. The incident prompted stricter standards for overhead rigging maintenance and mandatory safety clearance zones during live outdoor broadcasts. The network later settled with Nella's family, and city officials introduced new inspection requirements for all elevated technical installations used in public events. It was October 28, 2016, at a mid-sized college football stadium in the Midwest. The autumn air carried a crisp 52-degree chill as thousands of fans filled the concrete stands under overcast skies. The facility buzzed with the energy of homecoming weekend, its artificial turf gleaming under the stadium lights that had just flickered on against the darkening evening. 22-year-old Zora worked part-time in stadium operations while pursuing her communications degree. Known for her reliability and quick thinking, she had been handling game day logistics for 2 seasons. Her supervisor described her as someone who never hesitated to jump in when needed, always maintaining a calm demeanor even during the chaos of major sporting events. That evening, Zora was assigned to the utility crew, responsible for transporting supplies and equipment during game breaks. The stadium employed a sophisticated cable camera system that ran on tensioned wires stretched diagonally across the field, allowing for dynamic aerial shots during broadcasts. The system operated at high speeds, with cameras that could accelerate rapidly between predetermined positions. During the third quarter timeout, Zora received instructions to deliver water bottles to the visiting team's sideline. The break in play typically lasted 3 minutes, providing a narrow window for field access. Stadium protocol required coordination between broadcast operations and field personnel, but the communication system relied heavily on visual cues and radio chatter. As Zora stepped onto the field carrying the supply crate, the cable camera system initiated a rapid transition sequence. The camera carriage, weighing approximately 15 pounds and traveling at an estimated 25 miles per hour, moved along its predetermined path. The tensioned cable, positioned roughly 12 feet above the turf at its lowest point, was designed to remain clear of normal field activity. The collision occurred near the 35-yard line. The high-speed camera carriage struck Zora across the upper body with tremendous force, knocking her violently backward onto the artificial turf. She hit the ground hard, lying motionless as the moving carriage dragged past her before the operator triggered an emergency stop and the system ground to a halt. The impact left her unconscious and unresponsive on the turf, with visible head and neck injuries. Players from both teams immediately signaled for medical attention, as the live broadcast briefly captured the moment she was struck and collapsed before the feed quickly cut away and stadium personnel rushed to the scene. Emergency medical technicians reached her within 90 seconds, finding her unconscious and barely breathing. They began life support and transported her to the regional trauma center within 12 minutes. The game was suspended as investigators documented the scene. The cable camera system was immediately shut down and secured as evidence. Despite aggressive intervention, Zora never regained consciousness. She was pronounced dead at the hospital 4 hours after the incident from complications of severe spinal cord injury and traumatic brain injury. The investigation concluded that the incident resulted from a breakdown in communication protocols between broadcast operations and field management. No comprehensive field clearance procedure existed for coordinating cable camera movements with personnel access. The tensioned cable system, while properly maintained and functioning as designed, operated without adequate safety measures. The stadium implemented new safety protocols requiring complete camera system shutdown during any field access and installed additional communication equipment. The investigation found no mechanical malfunction, determining that the tragedy stemmed from procedural gaps in managing the intersection of broadcast technology and human activity in the live sports environment. It was August 19, 2016, and the late afternoon heat pressed down on the county fairgrounds in southwestern Arizona. The rodeo arena sat under a cloudless sky, with temperatures hovering near 98 degrees. Dust hung in the still air as vendors prepared for the evening's main event. Bowen Fisk, a 35-year-old weekend sports correspondent for a regional television station, arrived early to set up for his live broadcast. Standing just over 6 feet tall with graying temples, Bowen had covered rodeos for nearly a decade. His background as an amateur bull rider gave him a comfort level around livestock that most reporters lacked. The assignment was straightforward: deliver a live introduction from inside the arena before the evening's competition began. Bowen positioned himself near the bucking chutes, where a massive Brahma bull waited in the steel enclosure. The animal weighed approximately 1,800 pounds and showed signs of agitation, shifting its weight and snorting as handlers prepared the rigging. Arena maintenance had been delayed that afternoon due to equipment issues. The gate latch on the chute showed visible stress marks and slight bending from previous use. Standard protocol required a secondary safety lock, but in the rush to prepare for the broadcast, this backup measure remained disengaged. Bowen stood roughly 6 feet from the chute gate, well within what he considered a safe distance. As the live feed began, Bowen started his introduction, gesturing toward the chutes behind him. The cameraman had positioned himself at ground level approximately 20 feet away, framing a medium shot with the chutes visible in the background. The bull continued to shift restlessly, pressing against the gate with increasing force. The primary latch, already compromised from wear, began to give way. Metal groaned softly under the strain. Without warning, the latch failed completely. The gate swung open with violent force, and the bull burst blindly out of the chute, veering across the arena as it tried to escape the enclosure. Bowen had no time to react as the animal's momentum carried it into his position. The bull's massive shoulder and head collided with Bowen's upper body, knocking him violently backward onto the hard-packed arena floor. His head struck the ground as the animal's weight followed him down. The bull stumbled over him in the momentum of its escape, driving a hoof into his chest before veering away toward the open arena. Bowen lay motionless where he had fallen as handlers rushed to regain control of the animal. The entire attack lasted approximately 4 seconds. Arena personnel immediately moved to contain the bull, while others rushed toward Bowen. The cameraman had captured the initial moments before instinctively lowering his equipment. Emergency medical personnel reached him within 90 seconds, but the injuries were catastrophic. Bowen was unconscious and unresponsive, with severe head trauma from the fall and crushing chest injuries from the trampling. He showed no detectable vital signs. He was pronounced dead at the scene from blunt force trauma and crushing injuries sustained in the collision. The subsequent investigation confirmed that the gate latch had failed due to metal fatigue and improper maintenance. The report noted the absence of the required secondary locking mechanism and cited inadequate safety protocols for media personnel. The live television feed captured the moment the bull struck Bowen and knocked him to the ground before the control room abruptly cut away. The footage showed Bowen being struck and knocked to the ground, but the camera angle shifted as the cameraman reacted to the unfolding tragedy. Fair officials immediately suspended all rodeo events pending a comprehensive safety review. It was February 3rd, 2017, when a winter storm began building strength along the northeastern coastline. The city's skyline disappeared behind sheets of driving snow as temperatures plummeted below freezing. Ice formed rapidly on exposed surfaces, creating treacherous conditions across the metropolitan area. Wind gusts reached 35 miles per hour, turning the already dangerous storm into a significant weather event that demanded immediate coverage. Lyra Gant, a 31-year-old weekend weather presenter, had transitioned into broadcast journalism after spending several years as a high school science teacher. Her methodical approach to explaining complex weather patterns made her popular with viewers, though she remained relatively new to live outdoor reporting. Known for her thorough preparation and calm demeanor under pressure, she had quickly earned respect among colleagues despite her limited field experience. The station assigned her to provide visual storm coverage from a 14-story rooftop downtown, chosen specifically for its unobstructed view of the approaching weather system. The building's rooftop presented immediate challenges that morning. Ice patches had formed near the concrete parapet during the overnight hours, creating slick surfaces that reflected the gray morning light. The crew fastened Lyra's safety harness to what appeared to be a secure rooftop anchor point, but the mounting had deteriorated over time without proper inspection. Her regular footwear lacked specialized traction aids, a detail that seemed minor given the rushed nature of the assignment. The building's maintenance staff had not applied ice-melting compounds to the rooftop surface. Weather conditions deteriorated faster than meteorologists had predicted. What began as steady snowfall quickly intensified, pushing toward whiteout conditions. Visibility dropped significantly as the storm's core approached the metropolitan area. The camera operator positioned the equipment for a wide shot that would capture both Lyra and the dramatic storm backdrop, maintaining a fixed angle throughout the broadcast segment. As Lyra delivered her weather update, she stepped backward to gesture toward the approaching storm front, her movement still framed in the live shot as the camera held its wide angle. Her boot made contact with a patch of black ice that had formed along the rooftop's edge. The smooth sole found no purchase on the frozen surface. Simultaneously, a powerful gust of wind struck the exposed rooftop, creating additional instability as she fought to regain her footing. Her body went over the parapet backward. The safety harness snapped tight, loading the corroded anchor bolt with sudden force. The mounting plate tore partially out of the concrete before ripping free completely. The 14-story fall took approximately 3 seconds. Her body struck a fabric awning over a restaurant entrance partway down, tearing it instantly from its brackets before continuing uninterrupted to the concrete sidewalk below, where she impacted headfirst. Pedestrians on the street below scattered immediately after witnessing the fall. Emergency responders arrived within 6 minutes of the initial call, but the massive trauma from the impact had caused instantaneous death. The medical examiner later confirmed catastrophic cranial and thoracic injuries consistent with a fall from that height. The investigation revealed that the rooftop anchor point had failed its last inspection, but had not been replaced. Building management confirmed that ice conditions had not been assessed prior to the broadcast setup. The station immediately suspended all rooftop weather coverage, pending a comprehensive safety review. Federal workplace safety investigators cited multiple protocol violations in their final report, including inadequate equipment inspection procedures and failure to properly assess weather conditions before proceeding. The live broadcast briefly captured Lyra slipping and disappearing backward from the frame before the control room abruptly cut the feed. Storm coverage ended without explanation, leaving viewers unaware of what had occurred until official statements were released hours later. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now.